Hello, everybody. I don't know, every time I listen to that music, I get pumped up. I hope that you're pumped up to be here. High five for showing up to this 30-minute live chat with Dave Taylor, a 2024 climber of Aconcagua. Before we begin, and I introduce Dave to you all, just a few admin items. Number one, in the comments of whatever platform that you're watching this, I do invite you to drop your name, where you're calling from, and what expedition or trek that you have coming up. And if nothing, that's okay. Just drop in your why behind whatever training it is that you're doing. I'll do my best to actually share some of those live here, again, on whatever platform that you're watching. We are live streaming at the moment across Basecamp, our community training platform for mountain athletes. We're also going live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So whatever platform that you're actually watching this on, please, I encourage you to drop comments. I will do my absolute best to keep up with those comments as we go. If you've got questions that pop up in your head, go ahead and drop them in there. I'm going to hopefully work that into the conversation. We'll see how I do. The second bit of admin here is I'm going to do my absolute best to respect your time and pack in as much value as possible into these next just 30 minutes. And lastly, on the point of driving home value, let's talk about why we're actually hosting this conversation. And thanks, Nathan. I see that you're joining. You're heading to Aconcagua in January. So again, continue to have those posts and comments rolling in. I'm going to monitor them as best I can. So for your purposes, this is pretty relevant why we're hosting this conversation, Nathan. Many of you, like Nathan, are trying to climb Aconcagua this year. And welcome Matt as well, also going in January. Maybe you're climbing Aconcagua. Maybe you've got an Everest Base Camp trek coming up, or Kilimanjaro. I know some of the clients going through our breathwork training right now have those expeditions coming up. Whatever brought you here, what I have gathered is from you are questions about how you can make your expedition a success. You've asked questions about how fit you feel like you must be. You've voiced fears about acute mountain sickness and altitude sickness, and some questions about how to breathe when oxygen levels drop at high altitude. And what most people don't realize is that breathing issues are one of the top reasons why people don't summit their high altitude mountains, but most people don't understand that they're breathing poorly until they actually get on the mountain. And on that note, stick around until the end of this conversation where I'll provide you with a tool to find out how well you breathe right now from wherever you are in the world. And it only takes 5 minutes, but that's going to have to wait until the end of our conversation. This conversation is not going to be just about breathing, though. It's about Dave's experience as a whole in both his failed attempt at Aconcagua and then also his successful one. So I'm going to let Dave into our conversation now. And there we are. There's Dave. Say hi, Dave.
Anthony, how you doing? How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
I see Colorado. I love it. That'll be my home in about a month. And then I love Washington State.
Yeah, that's right. We've got Matt from Golden. So cool. I'm looking forward to you being here in Colorado. I'm based in Boulder, for those of you who don't know. So I'm going to be welcoming Dave with open arms here shortly.
So yeah, I'm in Maryland for those concerned about training. I'm at 175 feet.
Right, exactly. So, and I think we have plenty of those too. So just to introduce you, Dave, to the crew that's on, apart from being an Aconcagua summiter and a mountaineer, you are a mountaineer in another sense, and that is that you're a graduate of West Virginia University, aka the Mountaineers. For those of you coming in from Europe, maybe that doesn't quite land for you, but West Virginia University, their mascot is the Mountaineers. Dave also has served in our U.S. Army and as part of the Special Ops Forces for 24 years. And now Dave is the CEO of a company called LDR Leadership, a company that specializes in leadership education and training. But above all, I know that those accolades are pretty sweet, Dave, but I think above all, and most importantly, you are a real authentic voice for us, this community of mountain athletes, and somebody who I've come to see is humble and also been humbled on the mountain, like many of us as well. And I thought that you would be the perfect person for us to learn from, because I think there's a really unique value in hearing from your experience about how you didn't summit the first time, what you changed about your approach and process, and then went back at it a second time. And that's where I really want to start our conversation today, in just setting the scene. Even before your first attempt, Dave, what was your training like, for example, before you actually headed to Aconcagua that first time?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really looking forward to sharing the experience. I'm excited for everybody who's getting out in the mountains. I'm also jealous because, as I mentioned to Anthony this morning, it was a year ago today exactly that I stood on the summit of Aconcagua. I thought the timing was pretty unique. I didn't realize that.
We planned that. Yeah, we planned it. 1 year anniversary. Yeah.
Well, my previous background in the military, I was always training, so my routine always was fitness based, and to me, it was like, oh, I can do this. Now, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. The highest I'd been is 14,000 feet, 500 or something in the States. So I did a lot of running. I did a lot of strength training in the gym, and I did a lot of time under a pack, step ups as much as I could, being on a lower elevation. I would say it wasn't very structured. I'm not saying it has to be, but for me, it was like, oh, I can go do this. I can kind of power through it, but I didn't really have a structured plan at that point. So I was like, I'm just going to go out and train the best I can, down here in Maryland or over here in Maryland. But no structured path that I had in place.
Yep, understood. And you said the first time, this is actually a question from TC, who I see is on here as well, based in Parker, Colorado. He's going for Aconcagua here just early next year. He asked the question, you said that the first time around you were in shape, and I wanted to try to pinpoint exactly how in shape that you were, and to help us identify that for some of you that may, I know here we're going to put you on blast here for a second. I'm not going to show the Training Peaks data. I'm going to show the Coros watch first.
A little more reasonable.
For some of you that want to take a close look at this, Dave's base fitness, according to his Coros watch algorithm and formula, was a 57. That might mean something to somebody out there. I know that your Training Peaks was a CTL. Some people may be training on Training Peaks, a CTL of, I think, 33. Was that the number?
Yeah, 33.
Okay. So in January of 2023, base fitness was 57. This was your first attempt. Okay. Then we obviously attempted, maybe took a break, and then popped back up. We're moving along chronologically here. And talk to me maybe about this point, the start of your mountaineering program.
Yeah. So, I'm sure we'll discuss later, but I talked to Lisa Thompson from Alpine Athletics before the first time. And I was like, I can probably do this. And as I changed my process, I went back to Lisa. I mean, seven summiter, great, amazing accolades, great person, great human. I was like, all right, Lisa, I need a path, because I felt physically strong in the legs. I had some other things, but as part of the process, I was like, I want a structured program from somebody who has climbed big mountains to help me train for it. So I started with her, as you can see, March 19th of last year. And my base fitness at that point was 76.
76. Okay. So I'm gonna stop us there, because I don't want to give too much away about how we went from there. But as you can see, again, to answer that question, we were a 57 on the Coros watch and a 33 inside of Training Peaks on the CTL. So that was the base.
Another perspective,
fitness.
Anthony, sorry, another perspective might have been, I was running 10 to 15 miles. Also, okay. Like if there's a benchmark someone wants to look at, there's like, that's where I was putting in good distance running as well.
Yep. Okay, great. Now that we've kind of identified what your fitness level was going into it, tell me a little bit about how you felt like that quote unquote in shape level translated to the mountain. And even if we want to get into that moment going up and that turnaround, even at Cholera still being, like you've said, one of the clearest moments in your life, just relate maybe how you felt in shape, how your body felt in that moment, and then Talk me through that experience of kind of that turnaround moment.
Yeah, I felt, like strength wise, I mean, I remember saying to myself, oh, my legs feel pretty good, right? Because that's what most of us think about in the mountains is how do my legs feel? And I had a second experience. I was reminiscing with a couple of climbers last year that summited this morning about it. I felt good leg wise. I felt good. Legs felt strong. Didn't feel tired. I was like, okay, it's kind of like when you go for a run, you're like, okay, this is going to be a good run. I was like, I felt pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There was other things that, we can get to the acclimation aspect later when you like that played into it. But I would say that played into it heavily, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Moving from Nido de Condoras to Camp Colorado. So camp basically, I don't know how I want to assume everybody knows the names off the tops of the head. So base camp,
No, give
one,
it, give us a
camp
little
seven.
context maybe for
Yeah.
that, just in
So
case.
base camp is base camp Plaza de Mulas. Camp Canada is camp 1. Camp 2 is Nido de Condoras, and then camp 3 is Camp Colorado. So moving from camp 2 to 3, I knew I was in trouble. Like I was tired. I couldn't regulate my breathing whatsoever. My heart rate was a screaming 155. I couldn't control my breathing. I was almost in this panic mode. And I just knew I was moving slow because the pace I had up to that point was not there. And that's kind of when I knew I was in trouble. But that's when I knew physiologically also things were gonna go south. But that was the gap, the window when I first thought, man, I'm in trouble. Like I'm gonna struggle. Or when that first tinge of doubt like kind of crept into my head was during the move from 2 to 3.
Yeah. And in that moment, just looking back, what would you say that you realize now that maybe you didn't understand about altitude at that point in time?
Oh, well, at that point in time, so we might jump ahead a little bit here, but breathing, and I know
Well, okay.
Well, no, I mean, I'm serious because before the first climb, some folks may or may not know Mia Farrow. She's climbed Aconcagua 3 times. She's attempted the 360 of the thing a couple times as well. I've never met her in person, but she was going on the mountain at the same time. And I remembered, and you said it when you opened, I was asking her how people were doing. She's super friendly and helpful. And she's like, well, some people were struggling with breathing. And I just discounted it. I was like, breathing? Like, it's just breathing. Like, it was at that moment it all came together in which I thought, okay, now I understand what she was talking about. And what you opened with, that it's different breathing at altitude than it is at non-altitude or lower elevations. I mean, that's that aha moment I had at that point in time.
Yeah, definitely. There's a big difference between breathing, and just for maybe my context to throw in there, just so people maybe understand why it is so different. As you climb into high altitude, the air pressure drops, and with the drop in air pressure, the oxygen molecules, they become more sparse, more spread out. And so that hurts you for 2 reasons. Obviously, number 1, in every single inhaled breath, you're getting less oxygen per inhaled breath. But number 2, and one of the things that people often overlook, is how much more effort it takes to actually pull in low pressure air into your lungs. A volume of gas moves from a high pressure to a low pressure space. And so that extra effort oftentimes becomes too much for people, especially for those maybe with untrained diaphragm muscles, intercostal muscles. If you haven't trained the inspiratory muscles, then that obviously can lead to less air getting in, fatigue in those muscles, and you're kind of on a slippery slope from there. So just wanted to throw a little bit of science out there. So, okay, we had the moment that you turned around at cholera, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you sat on that. I assume that was pretty devastating / disappointing for you. You sat on that for a while. Talk me through, the process for you to come back to the idea of making a second attempt.
Yeah, I will. And you're right. I mean, I sat on it. I saw Eric's comment there. I mean, I sat on it for there wasn't a day for 3 months that I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And I was replaying all of the things that all right, what could I have done better differently, right? And at work, we talk a lot about process over outcome. Like there's so many variables and outcomes that we can't control. So after I got over it, I started to look back. I'm like, okay, what can I do? Like I'm like, okay, I thought I was in shape, and to the average person, probably, but I wasn't in what I would call big mountain shape for me. So when I made the decision, I basically was like, all right, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to look at all the processes that were in place that I did last time, and I'm going to do everything differently. Because at that point, I was like, all right, I've got to change the process on what I'm going to do. And for me, that was this decision factor. It's like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to adjust all the processes. And I can list, Anthony, all the things that I decided to, probably the 5 or 6 main things that I decided I was going to change.
Yeah, let's dive into those 5 or 6 things, because I think it is really important for people to understand, someone who's gone there, failed, and then coming back and succeeding. What were those 5 or 6 things that you changed in the process?
Yeah, the first one was, I was going to go back with a guiding company. So there might be some folks, again, not required, but for me, after the first experience, for context, we used Grahalis and they supported us up to base camp. But when we left base camp, there was just a group of 4 of us. There was no guide that was with us. So I wanted to go back with the Grahalis because I knew what I was going to get. And I had some good interaction with one of the guys that worked down there for a while, Elon. So that was going to help me with the process that they have in place with acclimatization, having access to water, which you need a lot of. Training was the other thing. I was adjusting my training, so I went back to Lisa. I said, all right, I'm gonna train with Lisa. Breath work was another one, because then I made the connection with Mia Farrow of like, it makes sense. And that was kind of fortuitous, right? Like I was working with Lisa, listening to her podcast, reading the book Breath. I think it's just called Breath, right? Not Breathe.
Yeah, by
Breath.
James Nestor. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And then I was talking to Lisa on one of our coaching sessions about you, and it all connected. And we connected on the breathwork aspect. And then I also looked at, everything, what I could do for acclimatization, whether that was breathwork and or things I did with a hypoxic tent or moving to Colorado a month beforehand, and anything in and around, from wearing a face mask. When they say like wear a buff over your nose and mouth, I didn't the first time. Absolutely didn't go anywhere the second time without it because of the dust and the dry heat. So I just really went back and looked at, okay, I need more water. I need training. I need breath work. I need acclimatization. All of these different things that I laid out that I didn't think I did well enough that I could do to improve the second time.
Yeah. And I know I've received some questions. This one I know is from Nathan. I'm not able to train higher than 5,000 feet. What can I do? And a part of your process, of course, did include a stint in Colorado, but you mentioned other things like the hypoxico, if you want to touch on what that's like for you. But then let's drill in a little bit into the breathwork training too, and what that was like. I want people to hear from your perspective what a quote unquote breathwork training is like.
Anthony, hold on 1 second. I got my training partner who wants to go outside.
No worries. That's right.
So first of all, I think you said Nathan. Nathan, I live in Maryland. So for those, I'm outside East Coast of the United States, 175 feet. So for 6 months, I'm training at 175 feet, and I'm doing inclines on the treadmill with the pack. I'm doing interval sprints on the treadmill. I am walking with the pack on a stair climber with the pack. All the things you can do. And the highest mountain in Shenandoah is 4,000 feet. And it would take me, jealous from those of you live in Colorado where you can gain 2,000 feet in like 2 miles. Here I'm walking 13 miles just to gain maybe 3,000 feet. So to me, it is, if you can put a heavy pack on and you can get some incline, you can do some step ups, you can do all that, that is great. And then, yes, the move to Colorado beforehand, I did sleep in a hypoxic tent. Again, I'm not saying that is required for me because of the experience I had. I wanted to give myself every advantage I could give. So that was part of it in the tent. And then I would train, do some sprints with it. And then the day is really almost the day I think I got out to Colorado, Anthony and I started the breath work training with the torture that he put me through. So I say this in context of when there were days I was doing strength training, I would do strength training before the breath work, because in some cases I thought the breath work was actually harder to do than the strength training, because it was different. It was different for me. And my scores showed it. I mean, my scores were, pretty low. It was hugely beneficial though. Yeah, that's the sports med. That's like the torture kit.
Yeah, that's right. It is an element of the breathwork training that is like torture. It does resist. And I just wanted to show you all what Dave looked like at some points in time with the mask on. This is a part of breathwork training. It helps resist the air as you breathe in, which strengthens those inspiratory muscles that I mentioned earlier. It also pools carbon dioxide right in the volume of space in front of your nose, which helps to train your carbon dioxide tolerance, which helps you feel less out of breath. And yes, you mentioned some of the metrics that you use.
Anthony, real quick though,
yeah,
if you're doing this stuff with you, it is uncomfortable, but don't skip it. Because it truly is something that enables you, as Anthony said, when you're not used to breathing, that's the closest you're going to get. It doesn't matter if you're in Colorado and you're used to it and you're on the 14er. It's not the same as you put that mask on. You're like, whoa, this is difficult. So those things that are uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable for a reason with a purpose.
Yeah. And let's dive, you mentioned scores, right? And just for a little bit of context, going into any fitness training program, right? You want to have your baseline numbers, and then you want to track progress and hopefully land in a different place. And we showed a little bit of what your base fitness level looked like at the start and then end of your physical fitness training program, which I'll show again in a moment. But in terms of the breathwork training program, there were really 3 key metrics that we tracked, I know. And that was the BOLT score, which is about it's called body oxygen level test. It's about oxygen efficiency in your body. The second score is a carbon dioxide tolerance test, how well you tolerate the rise in carbon dioxide in your blood, which makes you feel out of breath. So this is kind of like a breathlessness sort of baseline test. And then also the maximum breathlessness test score. And I just want to give huge props to Dave for these before and after numbers, because the BOLT score starting at 15, landing at 24, that's a 60% increase. The carbon dioxide tolerance test, 30 to 41, that was a 37% increase. But really the big one, and I weight this one even higher than others, which is your maximum breathlessness test score. You went from a 32 to an 86 on that. That's a number of steps that you can take on a breath hold after an exhale. That's 169%. That's a huge increase. And I mean, you can speak, maybe, do you feel like these things then translated to how things then felt different for you the second go around when you arrived at Aconcagua and started your second climb?
Yeah, there's no doubt it. There's no doubt it did, because from the moment, and the interesting thing, Anthony won't tell you this, but I'll tell you this. On my trip, there were 2 other guys that also that did some of the breathwork stuff with Anthony. So I'm going to plug the fact that they also reached the summit. You can make whatever connection.
Cheers to them, man. Hey, they put in the work. They made it up there with you. So,
but the funny part is we were consistently talking about our breath work. We were consistently talking about our breath work, and we were almost like encouraging each other, like, hey, how is it going? How are you feeling?
For the record, that's like music to my ears. If I can bring awareness to breathing, my mission on the mountain, then I feel like my mission's complete. If there's a bunch of you climbing the mountain talking about breath work, well, we're on to something there. So that was really good to hear, Dave.
Yeah, it was great. And to me, it made a big difference, right? Because now I'm thinking about, and at least our guides also brought it up as well. And so when you're out there and you're thinking about it, my breathing was measurably different throughout. That gap from, to me, like the first mental block was moving from Nido de Condores to cholera on how would I feel. And, I mean, I was tracking breath work, heart rate, all those things were measurably different. And it made a huge difference to me, for a couple things. One, as and others probably know, like breathing in itself is scientifically proven to do many things beyond just, physiologically helping you breathe with the diaphragmatic breathing, but also just allows you to be calm. And I would do a thing. I messaged Anthony on the mountain. I was like, the 2 in, it'd be like fuel in and then exhaust out. Like I was telling myself, like I'm breathing in the fuel and I'm letting out the, the bad stuff.
Exhaust. Yeah.
The exhaust to go out.
For context, everybody, that's a protocol that I do coach on the mountain. It's called the physiological sigh. It's a double inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. It helps to regain control of your breathing, especially if you feel out of breath. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head here. There is the training component of breathwork training and making physiological adaptations and changes in your body. But there's also this huge thing that is the mental composure side of it. Breathing has a unique element of connecting your brain with your body and stress regulation and whatnot. And I know you had mentioned for 3 days you were trapped at El Nido. And so talk to me a little bit about how maybe the breathwork training or other parts of your process actually then prepared you for just some of the setbacks that you actually faced on the mountain and how mentally you brought yourself this time around differently to those tough moments.
Yeah, sure. Well, so for context for everybody, when you move from Canada to Nido, typically it is you'll go to Nido, spend a night, rest, third day move to Colorado, and then go. We were fighting a weather window, so we stayed at Nido. We used 2 of our 3 weather days. So we had 1 weather day left. And so when you're sitting there and this is the case, it was very, there's a mental aspect of just being on the big mountain. And so the breath work to me was just, I had to keep myself present of, process over outcome. I still cannot control, but I didn't want to let myself mentally go down this path of, the weather's not looking good, where I'm taking myself, quote unquote, out of the game. So I just tried to stay really present on what I could do to realize, in the night before summit day, like we didn't think we were going to go because the weather the night prior was horrific at Colorado because we moved to Colorado and it was bad. But we woke up at, 3:00 in the morning. It was the only non-windy day on the mountain. But the breathing and it's almost like this meditation aspect of, hey, let me just go breathe, because at those elevations is you'll learn is sometimes just sitting there and breathing and being present in the moment. Just, for me, it helped me stay grounded in the here and now, not thinking about what could or could not be in the future.
Yeah. And there's a few protocols I know that you used, and thanks for texting me from the mountain for some tips on this. A few protocols that you used. I know I maybe hadn't mentioned this one, but the AMS breathwork training, which is just a simple 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, just to take full deep breaths, calm the mind down, and kind of just, like you said, I think, ignore the external world for a second and focus in on what you can control, which is your own breathing. And so obviously 3 a.m. then, not windy, you're going to make a go of it at the summit, toward the summit. Talk me through that experience of what it was like step by step to actually then ascend and finally reach it, I guess, for a second time.
Man, people would ask, like, when did you realize you were going to make it? And, everybody has seen like the cross on the summit there, as you come up past this part called the cave and you go on this long traverse, there's, I don't know, maybe a 10-foot, a little scramble. It wasn't until I got up this scramble and saw the cross that I realized I'm gonna summit. It wasn't until that point that I realized it was surreal.
And between then and between the times before that and that moment, what were you doing? What were you thinking about? Like, talk us through, what that process
I was just thinking about
head.
breathing and taking one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
It's truly, it's truly, there's this part called the traverse that, to me, it's not as bad, but it's not really a traverse. It's like a traverse this way. But then there's a part that goes up to the cave. And if you're, if there's no snow, it's a little more difficult. It's like 1 step up, 2 steps down. And I mean, in my mind, I was just thinking about breathing, like breathing and making it. There was 11 in the group, 5 made it, and 1 person got turned around at cholera. But during that time frame, I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you. I'm just saying that's what I was focused on. I was like, I have to breathe. Like, I have to breathe. I have to stay focused. I just tried to stay in the game. I said it earlier. It's like, all right, how do I stay in the game? Because for me, the goal, I had the goal. Like, I didn't want to come back to the mountain the third time. Like, I didn't want to come back to the mountain the third time because it's a big mountain.
Yeah, man. Well, there you are at the summit with the cross there, which is, I know, a photo probably many people have seen of that cross, but that's you. Just quickly, the 30-second version of what you felt in that moment being at the top.
Oh, when I first saw the cross, I mean, I got to the top. I just sat down, and I had tears personally because it was just, I mean, I carried a lot of weight from the first one, the things that I didn't think I did successfully. And then to get there and stand on top was pretty awesome. It was surreal. It was, a year ago today, coming, walking down the mountain was, it's a great experience. I mean, it was just one of those, you'll know when you get there, when you get to the summit and you're just like, that's it. I'm standing, just below 23,000, you're standing just below 23,000 feet.
Yep. And, well, congrats. And for those of you out there hearing it from Dave, you can do this. And so, we're cheering you on, from where we are and to wherever you are in the world. Couple additional questions. And then, actually what I'm going to do at this point is, we'll get to a few more questions that have dropped in the chat, as well as people that had sent them beforehand. I'm going to, just kind of wrap up with the core of our conversation. And that is, number one, if you are headed to Aconcagua in the next 3 to 6 months, we are rooting for you. And in the next 3 to 6 weeks, even. I know some of you are going literally next week. If you're headed there soon, best of luck. We're cheering for you. Take it one breath at a time. And then I want to throw this out there to everybody as well. If you are curious in understanding how well you breathe today, and speaking of a few of those metrics that David had mentioned that he did, we do have a special tool for you. It is called the Recal Breath Index, which is something that you can find out how well you breathe, not just from a biomechanical standpoint, how well you actually exchange gases, regulate your blood pH, but deliver oxygen throughout your body, but also your biomechanics of your breathing, how well you engage your diaphragm with each and every breath. What does your lung expansion look like? Your rib cage movement? How efficiently does the air flow through each and every breath? You can use that tool, the Recal Breath Index. It takes just 5 minutes to go ahead and get your score. And then you'll actually have a really clear picture on your weaknesses and your strengths, and see what you can either fix from a weakness standpoint or build on from a strength standpoint. So there is that QR code. Feel free to go to that. It is also just at assessment.recal.training. This is one of the most actionable things that I can give you to understand how you breathe, and then maybe change it before your upcoming expedition. So I'll leave that on there, and as we wrap up here, just to address a couple more questions that people have had. I had a question. Somebody, I think this was Jason. So Jason, if you're on, this is a shout out to you and your question. I think Jason leaves for Aconcagua in just 1 week. So Dave, what would you do if you had 1 week before heading out?
So 1 week. Well, first of all, Anthony, I can stay on. I've got nothing. So I mean, I can stay on as long as you need. I've got nothing I need to do to answer folks' questions, because it's one important. And like you said, I'm excited for folks. I think if you got a week out, I mean, you're not going to physically get stronger at this point. I mean, you are what you are at this point. I just kind of reflect on the journey, think about the way ahead, just relax. I could say stay hydrated, but you're going to fly. You're going to, just be in the moment. Just think about anything, check your gear, prep your gear, do some once overs, and just relax. I did at that point, when I had a week out, I mean, I kind of stayed to myself. Me personally, I just stayed to myself because I didn't want to get sick. I had a cold going into the first time. I didn't want any of that. I stayed home, just relaxed, and just was in the moment. So if you got a week out, there's nothing you're going to do to physically prepare yourself. Really, you can mentally prepare yourself about what you can do Um, and
Yeah.
kind of the accomplishment that's going to lie ahead, and just I'd say mentally prepare, but just relax.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. And maybe I'll chime in just for a little bit of context around what I offer people that last week before they actually go. We do have some finishing intermittent hypoxic protocols that you can work on. It's well, I won't go deeply into it, of course, but there are a few things that you can work on. But the special thing about that intermittent hypoxic protocol that you can push yourself even from sea level before you go is it's also going to be a mental exercise as well. There's a lot of long breath holds after doing some cyclic sighing, some cyclic hyperventilation. And through that breath hold, you drop into yourself. It really has this, if you've ever done like Wim Hof method breathing before, it's kind of inspired from that style. It has this unique ability of blocking out a lot of the noise, a lot of the ruminating that your mind might be doing, and you can laser focus on the task ahead. And so I oftentimes recommend that, yes, not just for the physical change. I agree with you, Dave. There's not going to be a lot of that can happen that last week before, but really, how do you prepare mentally for what you're about to face? So that's great. And we've got one more question that I believe popped into the chat from Jarmila. She asked, and if some of you need to drop off, I know that's great. Thanks for showing up, Eric. I know you said
Do it, Eric.
You're going back after an unsuccessful attempt. We're really rooting for you, man. So good luck to everybody out there. Feel free to please do that RBI and see where you land at that, and maybe some changes right beforehand for all of you. I guess I have maybe a little bit more time. But the one last question that I'll throw out there is from Jarmila. Her climbing company does offer oxygen. I know that it's been something that, just to give another shout out to Grajales, they've been offering this now. They've got a rapid ascent program, and I think there's like 12, maybe 14 people that are part of that this coming year that I believe will have access to oxygen. Dave, if you want to speak to that and what your take is on that, if it's just use it if you feel like it's what you need in the moment kind of stance, or if you have other.
So, I mean, for perspective on oxygen, Jamil, that's a great point. Like it's a personal thing, right? Like that is a personal choice to make. Grajales offered it on mine, and I took it. I was actually the first one for Grajales. And none of the guides thought I needed it. They're like, Dave, you don't need it. You don't need it. But for me, I was like, I am not, like at this point after the first attempt, I was not going to I was getting to the top. Do I think I needed it? Probably not, but I didn't want to have the regret. I believe that the companies like Grajales and all these, they have a process. And if you mix all of that together, it's a personal thing. Like, the acclimatization process that they have in place. So the first time we didn't follow it. Like so if there's folks thinking about doing it solo, I would caution on like, just because you think you could doesn't mean you should. So we moved way too fast. We didn't go high and sleep low. So we kept moving, and that was a contributor. But I stacked the process of acclimatization on top of the breathing. I mean, it's been done on the mountain for years without it, right? It's really a personal thing. But here's what I will tell you is that is weight you have to carry. Like, nobody's carrying it for you. You have to carry it. And that is an aspect that you have to consider, because you will have a heavier packing than anybody else on summit day if you're carrying oxygen. And so it's a personal choice. Do I think you need it for the mountain? No, you absolutely don't. You don't need it for the mountain, in my opinion.
Yeah, good points. And also you open up another layer here, which is an acclimatization schedule, following, well, your experience in doing it on your own and maybe thinking that you knew what you were doing, and then actually maybe following some guides and following a tried and true process maybe from Grajales. It seems like that was a big difference for you, Dave. Maybe speak to that, and then also speak to some of the concerns I know that we've had. Nathan, I think you threw this question out to us before we even started, which was, having a fear around getting altitude sickness.
Yeah,
And yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, the two things, right? And this, I think this ties into also Lee Chang's question there of, yes, my miles did increase. Like Lee said, Alpine Athletics, I think I was running like 15 miles. You know, people were like, well, why don't you just run a marathon? I'm like, well, no, because that's still like 11 more miles. I did increase my running miles from the first to the second. And the funny thing is, maybe not the funny thing, like I ran this morning and I told Anthony, I'm like, you drive me crazy because every time I run, I think about him because if I'm not breathing through my nose, I catch myself. So the long runs, I would do all my long runs, also doing the breathwork training through my nose. And then, you know, adding that with strength training and going up a mountain, yes, makes a difference. The applications for Grahalis, you know, for example, at Confluencia, my group stayed there. We got there, rested. We stayed like 2 nights. With Grahalis, we got there, took a rest day, did an acclimation hike, rest and move, right? Like the process to acclimatize is so much better. And you don't realize it until it hits you. So Nathan's point on being concerned, yeah, it makes complete sense. Like it's normal to feel that way. I would say if you can get it, take Diamox. I had it, I took it, but I didn't take it really till I got to Camp 1, and I attribute that to all the work I did ahead of time in prepping because my body was just more conditioned to it. The first time I got sick, 30 minutes after we got to base camp. So if you can get Diamox, I would take it. It's nobody asked you if you summited Mount Aconcagua with Diamox. Most people take it anyway. So it's a normal concern to have. But if you're following the process, I would trust the process. If you're going with somebody that it's a proven process, and it works in my mind. So that, you know, to me, that makes sense. And then Lee Chang, yeah, like the nutrition, I just ate better. I just tried to eat healthier and better and cleaner foods. Not that I ate in garbage, but it was part of the process of, you know, how can I adjust things to improve.
Yeah. And also to his question, did you increase your running miles from first attempt to second attempt, or did you just change what you were doing? I believe, and I don't want to speak for Lisa and her Alpine Athletics training program that she got you on. I believe maybe you did a lot more up and down rather than running, a lot more like muscular endurance type of work on the legs.
Yes, I did. So, I mean, I would run, but it was more, hey, put a big pack on and gain 4,000, 5,000 feet. Because at the end of the day, like running still doesn't replicate putting a pack on and then walking up a mountain. The last thing I'll say, this is not the last thing, but the thing I'll say when I think about it, if you're on Aconcagua and you can get a porter, get a porter. Just get a porter, right? I did not have one the first time. The second time, that was something I was like, I remember our group sitting around asking. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a porter. Like it's just your job or your goal is the summit. If your goal is to carry your own weight, that's different. Mine was the summit. Porters are there. It takes a huge proverbial weight off your shoulders to help you reach your goal because you're going to use a lot of energy on summit day because that's depending upon that's a 9 to 14 hour day probably. And you're using a lot of energy carrying stuff up the mountain ahead of time. But if someone asked me run or put a pack on and walk up a mountain, I would say put a pack on and walk up a mountain. If you had to pick one of the two, because that's gonna be a more specific to the mountain.
Good. I'm sure that's helpful. Hopefully that was helpful, Lee. I know that makes a lot of sense to me. I'll wrap up with one last question because you mentioned it twice now. You said when you're doing runs now, you're thinking of me. Oh, Dave, that's very sweet. I hear that a lot, actually, though I won't lie, but it's more in the negative when someone's like doing a hard workout and they're breathing with their nose or doing some breath work. They're typically cursing my name, which it's okay. I'm here to be your coach and be that for you, I guess. But you mentioned the nasal breathing when you're running, and then also you mentioned a buff and you mentioned the air up high, right? And I have my thoughts, obviously, on why nasal breathing is the superior way to breathe, especially with the cold, dry air that exists up at altitude. But if you want to speak to a little bit on your experience with the nasal breathing and how that changed things for you.
Yeah, of course. Cause the buff, like all these things I heard before, but it was like, you're like, whatever, I would see people the first time around with the buff and I didn't understand it. And so the mountain's like basically a high desert when you're walking up. So if you're breathing all that through your throat, you're going to get a sore throat, which I had a incredibly sore throat, where if you're breathing through your nose, your nose is now designed to catch all the particles that's coming through. And, it just protected yourself. And then even at night, I would try to put the buff over my mouth, so I wouldn't open mouth breathe and get a sore throat, but also a little bit of forcing through my nose. Now, okay, what I will also say, like the reality is there's going to be some times on the mountain that you're just going to have, and Anthony will tell you this because he would tell me on the mountain also, like there's sometimes you're just going to have to do what you need to do at a certain point. Like if you got to, because you just feel better, just do it. I mean, there were plenty of times where I would do that. I would say every time we stopped, I would do the physiological breath, like that's how I would center myself on every stop. But there's some points where you may just have to take a big breath in your mouth, through your mouth, because it just feels good, right? Because it feels better. And it's okay to do that. Like it's okay to because that's something you and I discussed, because I struggle with that a lot of like, hey, but sometimes I feel like I got to just take this big breath. And Nancy was like, well, Dave, just take the big breath, right? Like just take it. Like if you need it, just take it. Just remember, what you're doing. And sorry, I can talk about this forever. You can't figure it out. So one of the things I would use when you've got your pack on and you have the waist belt, to really think about doing the diaphragmatic breathing, I would breathe in and I would use like the pressure of my belly up against the waist strap. Like that was my cue of like that I'm getting in the deep breath and not just the short breaths, as a way, because sometimes when you're just moving, you're thinking, you can lapse into the rapid short breaths also through your nose.
Love that. That's a really nice, tangible bit of feedback there. Not only your tip to us there, but also tangible feedback in terms of, are you breathing diaphragmatic? Well, if your belly is tightening up against the strap that's around your waist, well, that's a clear sign that you are. And just for a little bit more context, everybody, 70% of the gas exchange that actually happens, the oxygen into the bloodstream, happens in the lower third of our lungs. So if you are breathing upper chest, shallow breaths, you're really not getting that oxygen deep into the lungs, where then it can actually get into your bloodstream. So that diaphragmatic breathing is extremely important. And your nose actually offers you the ability to get more air down there. There's just a lot of science behind how and why that's the case. So nasal breathing is really the way to go to get air low, but then also, like you had mentioned, it humidifies the air as it comes in from that dry air, so that you're not getting dry air directly injected into the lungs. It's also cleaning up particles in the air, so it clears it up as you breathe in. So there's a lot of advantages to nasal breathing. So that's a good point. But at the end of the day, you do what you need to do in terms of your breathing to get oxygen in and continue going up that mountain. So I'll wrap up here with just, again, a closing thought, which is, first of all, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. Really, like, your insight is huge for us and those that are headed to Aconcagua or wherever that you're headed, maybe early next year. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm not going to speak for Dave, but I'm certainly cheering you on. I assume that Dave is as well. So for all of you out there going for it this coming year, best of luck.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And if anybody wants to reach out and talk to me about more about it, I can. If you want to talk to the breathing, talk to Anthony. I can tell you what I did, but always happy to help someone. I had a lot of help getting up there, including Anthony, Lisa, Mia Farrow, and crew. I mean, it's a group effort, and it's good to have that support. And I appreciate you having me, Anthony. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can reach Dave on the Basecamp platform. Again, that's our community training platform for all of our mountain athletes. I just dropped a link in there. It's just simply basecamp.recal.training. And again, for all of you out there that are training, good luck. Continue on, and we'll see you at the top. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Take care. Yep. Bye.